side of him. I think he's still that same Steve. He's still that. But now you're also seeing another side of him that he never had to show.
Telling people you work with, I don't want you even to be next to me. Like, I have such disdain for you that I'm annoyed by your presence.
His TV talk show.
Okay, this was the one he had on NBC just recently.
Whatever, yeah.
Okay.
The one that, damn, who took his show from him?
Kelly Clarkson.
How can Kelly Clarkson take your show?
I heard you go on the air and you said, my sister done burnt too many bridges, and there's nothing I can do for her now. Steve, do you know how hurt?
Welcome back. Steve Harvey didn't just rise to the top, he climbed over people to get there. At least that's what more and more comedians are saying now that the laughter's died down and the truth's finally leaking out. For years, Steve's smile and sharp suits made him look untouchable, but behind those polished speeches and success stories, there's a trail of broken friendships, stolen material, and quiet resentment that's starting to resurface loud and clear. Behind the cameras and clean-cut image, there were whispers about backdoor deals, joke thefts, and loyalty traded for fame.
By the way, this is the same guy who rails against people who don't believe in his particular voodoo.
Right? Against gay people.
Against gay people, against Asian.
For the longest time, nobody dared to speak up. But now, the silence is cracking, and the stories coming out don't match the motivational image Steve's been selling to millions. People who once shared stages with him say the world doesn't know the real Steve Harvey. Not the one who was struggling for gigs, hungry for laughs, and willing to do whatever it took to win. Let's break it down. Steve Harvey, the man who went from sleeping in his car to becoming one of the most recognizable faces on TV. From The Steve Harvey Show to Family Feud, Miss Universe, and countless books and radio shows, Steve turned himself into a billion-dollar brand. He preaches about hard work, faith, and success, like a modern-day pastor. But according to some of his old peers, the story behind that shine is a whole lot messier than people think.
You know, my thing with Steve Harvey is that he used my material on both his platforms.
Yeah.
After I talked to him, I saw him at Def Jam, I went up and talked to him, I said, man, you're using my material.
Rewind to the late 80s and early 90s, the golden age of black stand-up comedy. Steve wasn't the king back then. He was just another comic hustling from city to city, trying to make a name. The scene was packed. Legends in the making like Mark Curry, D.L. Hewley, Cat Williams, Monique, Cedric the Entertainer, and Bernie Mac. All grinding, all competing, all respecting the code. And in comedy, that code was sacred. You never steal another comic's material. Ever. But that's exactly where the smoke starts swirling around Steve Harvey's name, because these accusations didn't come from one bitter comedian. This is a pattern that's shadowed his career for decades, and one of the loudest voices speaking on it? Mark Curry, the star of the 90s sitcom Hangin' with Mr. Cooper. Mark's been in the game just as long as Steve, and when an old interview of his resurfaced, he didn't bite his tongue one bit. He said it plain.
Don't appreciate their jokes being stolen, and Steve Harvey has rubbed several comedians the wrong way. Well, it looks like Harvey has found himself in some trouble.
No Halloween costume. I think we UPS, I guess, I don't know.
You've heard me say that every Halloween I had the same outfit on. I just had a brown box, and he just told me to tell everybody I was a UPS man.
My material on his show, so I had a beef on that.
On what show?
When he was on the bullshit talk show he had, and he did all my Halloween material one Halloween.
Says he knows that Steve Harvey stole his Halloween bit because it was a personal story. He was talking about himself.
Steve Harvey stole my whole routine. He took jokes I wrote, put them on TV, and acted like he made them up. That kind of claim hits deep in the comedy world, because once someone calls you a joke thief, that stain never really washes off. And if what Mark said is true, Steve's clean image might not be as spotless as it seems. That wasn't some random shot in the dark. Mark Curry swore he saw it happen with his own eyes. When the Steve Harvey Show hit TV, he said he instantly recognized jokes, setups, and even entire scenes that came straight out of his routine, word for word. Imagine turning on the TV and watching someone else perform your material, acting like they wrote it. That's what Mark said went down, and it still stings to this day. But here's the thing, Mark wasn't the first to say it. For years, smaller comics who once opened for Steve or worked under him whispered the same thing. They claimed Steve would listen closely, take notes, polish up their bits, and then hit the stage or screen like it was his own creation. It became one of those industry industry secrets people talked about quietly, until Mark decided to speak up loud enough for everyone to hear. He didn't sugarcoat a thing.
Cat is hot. Please put your hands together for Cat Williams.
Saying you are not supposed to be at the gas station making life decisions.
Can't even pump gas like you used to no more.
If you put $15 in your tank, you had time to bond with your vehicle. You had time to put the nozzle in and
put the nozzle in there and hit it.
Set the clicker and look through your car and clean off the dashboard and
be sitting there talking, be on your phone. Hey, what's happening? Be walking around, cleaning the windshield.
Run in the store, get some Pringles and a Snapper, and it'll still be pumping.
Okay, you go in there, bring me a wine cooler. Bring me a cooler, dog. Not no more.
You can't even turn around good for that son of a bitch click. As soon as you put it in, just click, click.
Get in there and start it up, and you can't believe that damn needle is a quarter tank of gas.
Mark said, "It's one thing to be inspired by somebody, but when you steal a man's act, that's robbery." That line hit like a punch to the gut. And what made it worse? When Mark tried to call Steve out back then, nobody wanted to listen, because by that point, Steve wasn't just a comedian, he was a full-blown brand. Big suits, big smile, and a talk show empire that made him untouchable. Who was gonna risk crossing the king of daytime TV? But Mark wasn't alone for long. A few years later, Cat Williams jumped into the ring, and when Cat speaks, you know it's gonna get explosive. In one of his most infamous interviews, Cat didn't hold back. He said, "Steve Harvey ain't the king of comedy. He's the king of stealing jokes." That hit heavy because Cat wasn't just talking about jokes. He was talking about loyalty, about respect in the brotherhood. See, Steve, Bernie Mac, Cedric the Entertainer, and DL Hughley weren't just four comedians. They were the original kings of comedy. That tour and movie changed everything for black comedy. It was supposed to be about unity. Four men standing strong together, breaking barriers, lifting each other up. But after Bernie Mac's tragic passing, the energy shifted. Whispers began spreading that Steve used Bernie's death as an opportunity to step further into the spotlight, sliding into that king position and claiming the crown for himself. Cat said it bluntly, Bernie was the people's champ. Steve was the TV champ, but Bernie never sold out. That's why folks loved him more. That statement cracked open a whole new conversation. Fans started digging through old interviews, looking at moments they once ignored. Like the time Steve sat on Oprah's couch talking about Bernie's success with a weird hint of envy. Or that shady moment when he told DL Hughley, "Some people just ain't meant to be stars like me." Now those clips hit different, especially when you line them up next to what Mark Curry, Cat Williams, and even Monique have said, all accusing Steve of stepping over others to build his empire. It paints a picture that's hard to ignore, and even DL Hughley, one of Steve's oldest friends and co-stars, hasn't always seen eye to eye with him, which makes people wonder, just how deep does this go? In a recent podcast, DL Hughley dropped a line that had everyone talking. He said, "Steve knows how to survive in any room, but that don't mean everybody likes the way he does it." That comment wasn't just about charm, it was about strategy. DL was talking about Steve's ability to switch up depending on who's watching. To the streets, he talks one way, real, relatable, full of that down-home energy. But when it's Hollywood time, he flips the script and becomes the perfect network man. That's what makes him powerful, and to some, dangerous. See, in comedy, being real is everything. The game runs on authenticity. Real recognizes real, as they say. But in Hollywood, it's survival of the slickest. Steve Harvey learned early that to stay alive in this business, you've got to adapt, even if that means breaking hearts and burning bridges along the way. One comic who worked with him back in the grind days said Steve was the kind of dude who'd laugh with you all night, then turn around the next morning and meet your agent. Pitching your own jokes. That's not ambition, that's cold strategy. But that's also how you go from cheap club shows to primetime television. And that's exactly why, as Steve's fame exploded, his friendships in the comedy world started fading fast. The more he climbed, the fewer people he kept around, like he was trading loyalty for opportunity. Now let's talk about his most public fallout, the messy beef between Steve Harvey and Monique. When Monique began speaking out about being blackballed in Hollywood, Steve didn't back her up. He challenged her on national TV. In that viral interview, he told her straight, "You can't sacrifice money for integrity. This is the money game." That one sentence told the world exactly how Steve thinks. For Monique, that moment cut deep. She looked at Steve as a brother, another comic who came from the same trenches, the same stages. But instead of standing beside her, he sided with the very system that shut her out. Fans saw that and started asking hard questions, like if Steve could turn on Monique live on camera, who else did he turn on behind closed doors? And here's where it gets even more chilling. Steve himself has admitted that he's done unforgivable things to get to where he is. In one older interview, he confessed, "I've done things I ain't proud of. But when you hungry, you eat what's in front of you." At first, people took it as a metaphor, until comedians who actually knew him started saying, no, that's really who he was. Hungry, ruthless, ambitious to the point of obsession. A man so focused on success that he stopped seeing who he hurt along the way. And that's the dark truth of fame. The higher you climb, the more people remember what and who you stepped on to get there. And now, after all these years, the past is finally catching up to Steve Harvey. Hard. Old clips are popping back up, comedians are spilling stories they once kept quiet, and fans are starting to see cracks in that clean, shiny image he's built. Because at this point, it's not just about stolen jokes anymore. It's about how fame changed the man behind the smile. This is the same Steve who preached faith, family, and integrity, but also cheated on his first wife and rebuilt his empire straight out of Hollywood's pockets. The same man who talks endlessly about loyalty and brotherhood, yet allegedly cut backroom deals that left his own people stranded once the checks started rolling in. Even former members of his radio crew have spoken out, saying they felt used and replaced once Steve's name got too big. One insider even said, "Steve don't keep friends, he keeps opportunities." That line hit like ice. Cold, but maybe true in the world he lives in. And yet, no matter what scandal breaks or what accusation flies, Steve keeps winning. It's like he's coated in Teflon. Nothing sticks. He just flashes that signature smile, says a quick prayer, and cashes another massive check. Family Feud keeps smashing TV ratings, his books keep selling like hotcakes, and his motivational speeches go viral every single week. It's almost unreal, like controversy fuels his success instead of slowing it down, but maybe that's the secret. Steve understands the game. He knows the power of image better than most. He once said, "If people believe you're blessed, they'll forget what you did to get there." And looking at his career now, maybe he wasn't lying, because the world seems to have forgiven, or at least ignored, a whole lot in exchange for that charm and success. Still, that raises one haunting question, you know? Can a man really build an empire on bad karma and still sleep at night? Because behind every bright light, there's a shadow, and Steve's shadow keeps getting darker the higher he climbs. For all his fame, Steve Harvey remains one of the most criticized men in entertainment. Every single year, a new scandal surfaces, another story leaks, another old friend steps forward saying, "That ain't the man y'all think he is." From Bernie Mac's tragic death, to Monique's fallout, to Cat Williams' brutal jabs, his name always lands in the middle whenever people start talking about snakes in Hollywood. And maybe that's the real lesson here. Maybe Steve Harvey isn't just a man, but a reflection of something bigger and uglier. The uncomfortable truth about fame: sometimes being good ain't enough. Sometimes you've got to play dirty to win. And Steve Harvey mastered that game a long time ago. In this game, you gotta be ruthless, you gotta be sharp, you gotta smile in people's faces while quietly taking what's yours, and pray nobody catches you doing it. Because in Hollywood, the funny ones don't always win, the smart ones do. And no matter how you feel about him, Steve Harvey is easily one of the smartest players comedy has ever seen. But like D.L. Hewley once said, just because you made it don't mean everybody clapping is happy for you. That line cuts deep because it perfectly sums up Steve's climb. His rise was iconic, no doubt about that, but it didn't come without casualties. Behind all those bright lights and million-dollar smiles are broken friendships, lost trust, and shattered respect that can't be glued back together. And now, as old friends, comics, and co-stars start speaking up one by one, fans are being forced to face the real question. Did Steve build his success, or did he borrow it from everyone around him? Because the stories all sound too similar to ignore. It's starting to look less like coincidence and more like a pattern. One built on charm, calculation, and a whole lot of silence from the people he outshined. Still, while everyone else is finally telling their side, Steve's too busy writing the next chapter of his empire to respond. He's acting like the noise doesn't even exist, smiling for the cameras, hosting his shows, living his best life. But deep down, everyone knows karma doesn't miss appointments. Comedy runs on timing, and karma. She's always right on schedule. So now the world's asking, did Steve Harvey really climb to the top by scheming, hustling, and taking what wasn't his? Or is this just bitterness from comedians who never got their shot? Either way, one thing's crystal clear. The laughter may have built Steve Harvey's name, but the silence growing around him is starting to speak louder than any punchline ever could. And what's wild is, even with all the noise, Steve Harvey still walks around like nothing's wrong. Like the rumors, the accusations, the shade, none of it can touch him. But lately, that confidence is starting to look more like defense. Insiders say the pressure's been building behind the scenes, and not just from comedians. There are whispers of old business partners, staffers, even ex-friends who are sitting on stories they've never told before. They say the man behind the motivational quotes is hiding skeletons that could flip his whole image upside down. Some say Steve's been calling in favors, trying to keep certain people quiet, and if that's true, it explains why his circle's been shrinking. People who once stood beside him now move with distance. Polite smiles, no real trust. One source put it bluntly: Steve don't fall out with people, he outgrows them, then forgets they exist. That line hit hard because it fits the pattern. Every time Steve levels up, someone close to him disappears. Even his own fans are starting to question it. The same folks who once called him America's uncle are now side-eyeing interviews, catching how he dodges certain topics or laughs off serious questions. One viral comment said, "Steve's biggest skill isn't talking, it's pretending." And the truth is, that might not be far from reality. Still, there's no denying his hustle. Steve's empire didn't build itself. The man worked non-stop, from broke nights in his car to global fame. But somewhere along the way, that hunger turned into something darker. Obsession, maybe even fear. Fear of losing everything he built, fear of being seen without the mask. That's the price of always being on you stop knowing who you really are when the cameras go off. And that's where things start to get messy. Because people close to Steve say the mask slips behind closed doors. The same man preaching positivity reportedly turns cold when the spotlight's gone. One former associate said, "He'll preach about forgiveness, then cut you off forever if you cross him." It's that mix of charm and control that makes people both admire and fear him. Now, with comedians like Cat Williams and Mark Curry keeping the pressure alive and old interviews resurfacing weekly, the question hanging in the air gets louder. How long can Steve keep the truth buried? Because every empire built on secrets eventually faces a storm. And if that storm's coming for Steve Harvey, it might already be rumbling in the distance. And that storm might be closer than Steve Harvey thinks, because insiders say certain people are finally ready to talk. There are whispers that a few of Steve's former collaborators, the ones who claim he borrowed their ideas or pushed them out once he got famous, have been quietly working on a tell-all. Imagine that, a documentary or podcast series revealing what really went down behind the scenes of his rise. If that happens, Steve's whole legacy could be up for debate. And here's what's wild. Some of these folks aren't just random names. We're talking comedians who shared stages with him, writers who helped him build his earliest routines, even TV staff who say they saw things that never made it to the public eye. One source even hinted that a few episodes from the Steve Harvey Show had creative credits that didn't tell the whole story. Now, if that's true, it means the joke-stealing accusations might just be the tip of something way bigger. What's even crazier is how fans online are doing their own investigations. Threads, side-by-side clips, old stand-up tapes. People are comparing punchlines from the 90s and early 2000s, lining up the receipts for the world to see. And the overlaps? Let's just say some of them look too close for comfort. You can literally watch Mark Curry's old routines and find bits that later appeared in Steve's sets almost word for word. That's not just coincidence. That's a pattern fans can't ignore anymore. But Steve, as usual, is acting unfazed. He's smiling, dressing sharp, and dropping inspirational videos like nothing's wrong. It's almost like he's leaning into the image harder than ever, flooding social media with success talk, hoping people forget the noise around his name. But the internet doesn't forget, and the timing couldn't be worse, because the more he tries to move forward, the more the past keeps pulling him back. Even other celebrities are starting to speak carefully when his name comes up. Nobody wants smoke with him directly, but you can feel the tension when people bring up topics like loyalty, brotherhood, or stolen jokes. It's like everyone knows there's more to the story. They just don't want to be the first to say it out loud. At this point, it feels like Steve Harvey's public image is running on two timelines. One built on success, motivation, and endless positivity, and the other built on secrets, silence, and people he left behind. And sooner or later, those two worlds are bound to collide, because the truth, it always finds a mic. And when it does, the laughter might not sound so funny anymore. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to stay in the loop with all the latest tea. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update, and I'll catch you in the next video.